Headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. The Colombian government and the National Liberation Army, or ELN, have ended their 6th round of peace talks without agreeing a new bilateral ceasefire. After meeting in the Cuban capital, Havana, the two parties said important progress was made but acknowledged they failed to achieve a second agreement of truce. Now the incoming government, headed by President-elect Iván Duque, will have to continue with the peace negotiations. Many fear Duque has no will to achieve a peace agreement similar to the one outgoing President Juan Manuel Santos reached with the FARC in 2016. Regardless, the ELN has shown its willingness to negotiate.
We hope that this will be the basis for a 7th cycle to be carried out during the administration of the new President of Colombia, Dr. Iván Duque. What we have done in recent days here in Havana, in our opinion, is to advance significantly on the elements that we have called chunks of a new bilateral, temporary, national ceasefire agreement.
We are not completely satisfied because we did not achieve a ceasefire agreement nor the design for broad participation in the construction of peace. But we are pleased that we have made significant progress and that there are some advances which, if we continue to work with the same commitment and determination as we have, we can see that within a reasonable time we will achieve those agreements and promote the agenda for building the Colombia that we all want.
Meanwhile, Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos said there was very little missing to reach an agreement. He added that there is a document and protocols drafted that could be close to be applied. He is confident that Duque will continue with the peace talks. Santos will hand over power to Duque in August 7th.
There is already a document on the ceasefire, and the protocols are practically ready. What we expect is for the next government to decide if it will continue with the talks. I hope that it does. With what is missing, that is very little, I will say that a 10% is what is needed to start the real verifiable ceasefire and then continue with the rest of the agenda.
We continue in Colombia, where the National Land Agency signed an agreement with the Truth Commission for the analysis of 36,000 cases of land dispossession. The aim is to analyze the files related to land disputes that took place during the 50 years of internal conflict. Now the Commission will have to clarify the cases and the links between land possession and violence. This was recognized in the peace agreement signed by the Colombian government and the FARC in December 2016. Pro- and anti-abortion rights groups in Argentina are preparing for next week's Senate's vote on an abortion bill. Demonstrators are preparing massive mobilizations ahead of the final vote on August 8. Congress tried to modify the draft bill that was approved by the lower house in June, seeking to shorten the period to have an abortion, but it failed to pass.
There is still uncertainty about the possible outcome, with almost a week of discussions in Congress about abortion. Out of the 72 senators that compose the upper house, 35 legislators said that they will vote against the initiative promoted by the movement of women, and 28 will vote for it.
The fight is on to the last minute. This is an issue where the church and the political power of the right wing have a lot of interest. They are forcing legislators to vote against the bill, especially senators from small provinces where the church has more power.
With attention on the undecided senators and those who could be next Wednesday, on August the 8th, and those who are in favor of decriminalizing abortion but propose modifications to the bill, activists denounce that the third party aims to make changes.
It is the pending debt that democracy has, freedom of our bodies. After all, that is a public health issue because abortion is a reality. Abortions are happening. Women who have the resources undergo the procedure without difficulty, but women with less resources are those who are at risk of dying. And on the other hand, it's because illegal abortion is a millionaire's business. It was stated during the debates that today abortions cost around $70 and illegally could cost around $400. So what really is at stake? It isn't the lives, but the business.
The distrust of the leaders is justified because of the complexity of the situation raised in the Senate. If the Senate does modify the bill next week, the original initiative will have to go back to the voting stage, which means it will have to be debated next year at the earliest.
We all hope to see less abortions because we understand that it's an integral policy that has to do with the state. We need to have sex education in schools. This is also part of our demands. So it's not about life and death because of abortion, but rather abortion being safe, free and legal.
Demonstrators awaiting hope under the motto, sexual education to decide, contraceptives to not abort, legal abortion to not die. Women and men from all ages and social classes will remain outside of the Argentinian parliament, waiting on a decision from the upper house.
Thousands of people took to the streets of Argentinian capital Buenos Aires to demand justice for late activist Santiago Maldonado 1 year after his death. Demonstrators marched from Plaza de Mayo through the capital to demand the government resolve the case. 28-year-old Maldonado went missing on August 1st last year. He was arrested at a demonstration in support of Argentina's indigenous Mapuche community. His body was found 79 days later in the Mapuche community of Chubut.
1 year after his forced disappearance, followed by his death, we continue to demand truth and justice. We want this day not to be a mere anniversary. We want this August 1st to be the starting point for the construction of a unit that puts the agenda of human rights above partisan and ideological differences. Human rights should be defended and not violated.
Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa has reached out to opposition leader Nelson Chamisa in an attempt to defuse tensions after a day of clashes over election results. Mnangagwa has been calling for peace and dialogue following accusations of vote rigging and the army's violent clashes with civilians. He has asked for an independent investigation into the violence that has left at least 3 people dead. Meanwhile, armed soldiers and police are patrolling the streets of capital Harare a day after violent clashes between protesters and security forces. Businesses have closed as people await for the release of the disputed electoral race. Charred remains of fires can still be seen. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged the country to exercise restraint and has called for calm. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang said on Thursday the elections progressed in an orderly manner. He also emphasized the need for stability and hoped that both parties can work towards ensuring peace. China has close economic and diplomatic ties with Zimbabwe. Observers from the European Union questioned the electoral process of the presidential and parliamentary vote before the violence erupted.
As a friend, China has always closely followed the situation and developments in Zimbabwe. At Zimbabwe's invitation, China sent a team to observe the election. According to their observations on the ground, the level of participation of Zimbabwe's people was high, and the election was generally peaceful and orderly.
We'll take a short break now, but join us after a video from our multimedia team. Welcome back. Thousands of Catholic believers in Nicaragua have turned the celebration of Saint Dominic into a procession for peace. This year's August 1st celebration transformed into a massive pray for peace. Saint Dominic was a Spaniard who founded the Dominican order and is the patron saint of Managua. Nicaragua is trying to get back to normal after a political turmoil and 4 months of ongoing protests that have left at least 265 people killed, according to figures of the Commission for Truth, Peace and Justice.
We are going to pray to God so that through His servants, the situation in the country will improve, and we will also pray for those who have died for this just fight.
It is a promise and a tradition in honor of my great-grandmother. I have been carrying the image of Saint Ed for 18 years, transporting it to Managua. Every 1st and 10th of August, I come with it. It is a promise that I should keep until I die, really.
Pope Francis has announced that the death penalty can never be sanctioned because it attacks the dignity of all human beings, changing fundamental teachings of the Catholic Church. Previously, the Church said it didn't rule out capital punishment if it was the only way to defend human life against an unjust aggressor. However, Pope Francis has now ruled that the death penalty is inadmissible in all cases. Francis has long been a critical of the capital punishment. Prosecutors in Chile have asked the government to submit a formal request to the Vatican for information on 9 clergymen and lay workers accused of sexual abuse. The prosecutor's office said it was investigating 38 accusations of sexual abuse against 73 bishops, clerics, and lay workers in the church. The case involves 104 victims, most of whom were underage at the time of the alleged abuses. This occurred in capital Santiago, the city of Valparaíso, and the southern region of Araucanía. The prosecutor said it could submit additional requests in the future. Still in Chile, clashes broke out in Santiago as the students took to the streets to voice their opposition to the conservative government's youth labor law. Demonstrators say the proposal will limit their opportunities to enter the workforce in search of full-time employment as they try to launch their careers. The proposal presented by President Sebastián Piñera sanctions work for students between 18 and 28 with a limit of 30 hours per week. Bolivian Foreign Minister Fernando Guanacuni announced the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez will visit the Latin American country on August 28. This meeting is important for Bolivian authorities as they want Spain to boost the exemption of visas for Bolivian citizens in the European Union, as it did with Colombia and Peru and currently with Ecuador. Bolivian President Evo Morales already visited Sánchez last March in Madrid to strengthen the bilateral agenda. In addition to Bolivia, Sánchez is expected to visit different Latin American countries in late August. Llamas were sacrificed in Bolivian capital La Paz as a gift to the Pachamama or Mother Earth. According to this ancestral Andean tradition, the community has to offer Mother Earth blood, and in return she will grant the people prosperity and health. The Yatiri, or community healer, offered the blood and the heart of the llamas. Thousands of Salvadorian believers took part in a colorful parade in capital San Salvador. The parade marked the beginning of the city's patron saints festival in honor of Divino Salvador del Mundo. People wore masks and outfits representing characters of the local mythology. The festivities will end on August 6th with a massive mass officiated by the country's bishops. Residents of the Amazon region of Peru, known as Vraem, rejected the militarization and suspension of fundamental rights due to a contra-subversive policy that, according to analysts, have failed.
Peru has extended a state of emergency for 60 days in 56 Amazon districts of Los Rios, Apurimac Valley, Ene, and Mantaro Varam with the purpose of combating the subversive group Sendero Luminoso and drug trafficking. Locals say the measure violates their rights.
The armed forces constantly enter our homes, causing our children to suffer from psychological trauma.
We demand the government stop the state of emergency so that people can live in peace.
Analysts say that the measure has failed since it was implemented in 1982. For example, in the last 10 years, 138 police and military members were killed by subversive groups. However, it's calculated that between 10 and 15 drug trafficking airplanes have flown frequently.
$400 million have been invested in purchasing 24 Russian helicopters, but not a single drug trafficking airplane has been captured in FtS in the past 10 years. Why do they continue to build military and police bases in an area where they cannot control subversive groups and fail to fight against drug trafficking? They only violate citizens' rights.
Congressman Humberto Morales also opposes the state of emergency, as there are economic interests behind it.
There are important agricultural companies that make a lot of money from selling and controlling the production of cocaine. They also control small producers affected by the state of emergency situation and cannot trade their products.
For residents, analysts, and politicians, the main problem in this region is extreme poverty, which is not solved with military bases. It's solved with schools, hospitals, roads, and agricultural programs for alternative crops.
We'll take one last short break, but join us again after a video from our multimedia team. Thanks for joining us again. Thousands of people greeted opposition leader Jean-Pierre Bemba on Wednesday as he returned to the Democratic Republic of Congo to submit his candidacy for December's presidential election. Bemba, a former vice president whose war crimes convictions at the International Criminal Court in The Hague were quashed on appeal in May, is expected to pose a challenge to President Joseph Kabila.
Joseph Kabila's clan thought we were living in a kingdom, that if a president dies, his son replaces him, and if a priest dies, his son will replace him. That's over now, because Jean-Pierre Bemba is here now. That's over. He is our president.
For more on this, we are joined live from Washington, D.C. by Maurice Carney, the Executive Director of Friends of the Congo. Thank you for joining us, Maurice. What does the support of Bemba's return mean?
Well, it means at least two things. One, there's genuine support for Bemba himself. Two, that he embodies the aspirations of the Congolese people to get rid of Joseph Kabila. During the rallies, the people were chanting, Kabila, Bemba is here, it's time for you to go. So he embodies the sentiment of the Congolese people, and they see in him an opportunity, a strong force to remove Kabila from power.
So Kabila has been refusing to step down for some time now. Is there any reason that we can think that that could change with this situation now?
Well, we have a hard deadline. By August 8th, candidates for the December 23rd election or political parties have to submit the names of the candidates. With Kabila's party, they've been floating the idea that they would submit his name to run for presidency. However, the Constitution bars him from running. He has served his 2 5-year terms, which ended in December 2016, and he's holding on to power beyond the constitutional mandate. So we will know for sure by August 8th what Kabila's move is going to be. But rest assured, irrespective of whether he runs for office or not, he wants to hold on to power, and he wants to do so by any means necessary.
So it's interesting to analyze also the role that Congo's neighbors like Angola are playing in the situation, and also the Western powers, especially the United States.
Yes, well, Kabila got into power with the backing of the United States in 2001. The U.S. backed Kabila in 2001. They backed him again in 2006. They tilted the playing field so that he could be elected to the presidency. In the 2011 elections where massive fraud occurred, the West backed him again, particularly the United States. So Kabila has been an ideal agent of neocolonialism for the West. He has served them well. However, they're ready to turn the page, just as they did with Mobutu, when the United States backed Mobutu for over 3 decades, and they're ready to get rid of him. It's the same stage that they're at with Kabila, and he's responding he has responded by hiring an Israeli security firm to lobby some of the most right-wing forces in Washington to try and convince the Trump administration to keep him in power. So we're seeing the end days for Kabila as it relates to his relationship with the West, and he's trying to present himself now as an anti-imperialist force, but it's very important for us to recognize that since Kabila has gotten into power, he's been an agent of neocolonialism. We often say that these agents of neocolonialism, once the West is ready to get rid of them, they start putting the rhetoric out that they're actually anti-imperialist. But Kabila is a staunch, is firmly ensconced in the camp of the West.
And very quickly, today is the day of remembrance of the Congolese genocide. Can you tell us a bit about why August 2nd is so significant?
Yes, August 2nd, 1998 was the jump off of the Second War in the Congo. In October 1996, it was the first invasion of the Congo by Western-backed allies Rwanda and Uganda. They installed Laurent Kabila as president at the time. He fell out with Rwanda and Uganda, with the backing of the United States, launched a second war on August 2nd, 1998, that triggered the loss of an estimated 6 million Congolese. So Congolese throughout the globe and Friends of the Congo see this day as a commemoration day, the day that commemorates the tremendous loss of life of Congolese.
Thank you very much for your time, Maurice.
All right, thank you.
Now let's take a look at more stories making headlines around the world.
The United States and China trade war has taken a new turn, with President Donald Trump proposing tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese goods to 25% from the original 10% his administration is currently contemplating. China has so far insisted they don't want an escalation, but are, however, exploring other possibilities of strengthening their trade, especially with Britain post-Brexit. President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum to the Democrats, saying that he would allow the federal government to shut down if they don't support his demands of building a wall at the Mexican border, as well as other changes to immigration law. Since taking office in 2017, Trump has threatened to shut down government several times to get his way over his policies.
Even if they saw weakness, if they see any weakness, they will come by the millions. We have to have strong borders. We're going to have the wall. We're going to have the wall. We've already started it. We've already started it. You know, we've started it in San Diego.
The Democratic Republic of Congo has announced a new outbreak of Ebola virus just days after it declared it was over. 4 cases of the deadly virus were confirmed in the northern Kivu province with no indication that they were linked to the country's previous Ebola outbreak.
And with that, we come to the end of this news brief, but there's another stories, as you know, you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And be sure to also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.